I hope you had a wonderful weekend. The weather was beautiful, and so I hope you got outside and got to enjoy that. Today, we are going to talk about what comes next. Last week, we finished the story A Sound of Thunder, and today we're going to focus on how do we select evidence from the text from the story to support a claim, and also thinking about how do we organize our writing and organize our analysis in a way that really communicates our thinking and understanding of a story. So for your warm-up, I asked that you take a look at the feedback on the Lesson 8 document. On that document, I had asked you to think about the central message or the theme or the big idea that was communicated through the story. And so you all came up with some really good thoughts. I also asked you to find some evidence to match that. And so I gave you some feedback on your thinking thus far. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about theme and author's purpose in just a minute here. We'll also go over your paragraph assignment details. You'll have some work time, and the expectation is that the paragraph is finished before break. Okay, so I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking about author's purpose and theme. This is a little mini lesson. And so I would make sure that you're listening to this, especially if the feedback on your document asked you to really think specifically or revise the statement that you crafted on Friday. So when we think about author's purpose, it breaks down into three main categories. There are certainly others, but we often talk about author's purpose being to entertain, to persuade, and to inform. And oftentimes a story or a text can do all of those things or some of those things. But authors often have a purpose in writing, and the reader is going to interpret that. It might not always completely match what the author intended to say, but we as readers input that the experience of reading the story and kind of mix that with our own experiences, and so we might have a slightly different takeaway than the author intended. But if you can back up your thinking with evidence from the text, then that's a valid interpretation. So here's an example of a claim statement around author's purpose. In the novel, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, author Sherman Alexie's purpose is to show how the protagonist overcomes obstacles to pursue his education. So what the writer did here was to name the story, name the author, and clearly let the reader know what the purpose of that story was based on what the student had interpreted from the story. Theme is a little bit different. It's a little bit nuanced, and it's bigger than the story. A theme can be communicated in a story. A similar theme can be communicated in a movie or a play. And so these are more universal. They're universal truth or a lesson or a moral that can be applied to a variety of situations. So when we're identifying themes, we have to remember that themes are not explicit. So the writer is not going to say, I'm writing a story about why you should be a good friend. It's up to the reader to infer it because themes are implied. We might understand that we should be a good friend because of the actions of the character. And as I said before, themes are bigger than the story. So if we think about the small world of the story, right, that theme can translate into the big world and applies to the real world. So for example, if a group of schoolboys is stuck on an island and they have to form their own society, and that doesn't go so well, that small world of the story is reflecting how individuals or a society might cease to function under severe conditions in the real world. So the world of the story is created by the author based on their understanding and their experiences in the real world. So here's an example of a theme statement. In the novel, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, author Mark Haddon communicates the importance of trust in relationships. So this writer has again identified the story, the author, and a theme, and put that together in a theme statement or a claim statement. And then in their piece of writing, they're going to find evidence to support that. What is on here, on this slide here, is actually an example of a CEIF paragraph that I use in my 9th grade classes. This follows, it's a well-developed paragraph. It's organized. It doesn't follow perfect LC form. You'll notice that the evidence and the analysis are interwoven, and rather than having it say like the first piece of evidence is followed by analysis. This is a more nuanced and sophisticated way of organizing your thinking. When you log on to Google Classroom at the end of our video today, you'll see that I created a paragraph template for you on the document, and you can absolutely use that as a resource. You can write your paragraph right into that document. You are also welcome to delete it and to write a well-organized paragraph on your own. But you still need to have a claim. You need to have evidence. You need to explore the evidence through analysis, and you need to have a finisher. But you can kind of play with how you do that within the context of your paragraph. One thing I just want to reiterate as you're thinking about this paragraph assignment is some of the feedback I got from Mr. Wyckoff and Mr. Thomas were that on your last piece of writing, many folks were able to identify the theme, but they were having trouble making sure that the evidence they selected was a good match for their claim. So that is certainly an area that you should be really mindful of, and you can be asking Ms. Olson and Steve for support there. Again, you are always welcome to come see me upstairs in D9 if you have any questions or if you need help selecting evidence. Okay, so before I turn you loose onto onto Google Classroom to look at the paragraph assignment details, I wanted to talk a little bit about A Sound of Thunder because because I'm not in the classroom with you, I haven't had a chance to hear your discussion or hear your thinking on the story. My only understanding of what you guys know is through the exit tickets that you've been working on. So I'm certainly a little detached here, but I'm going to just kind of interject and share some of my thinking about the story. Okay, so first and foremost, one of the takeaways from the story is this concept of the butterfly effect. And this is that ripple effect that a butterfly might flutter its wings on one side of the world, and the impact of that movement would reverberate around the world and could create a tsunami on the other side of the world. And while you might think about that and think, well, that's really far-fetched, that's unreasonable, the larger idea here is that all of our actions have some sort of impact on the world around us. And we might not always consider or think about the impact of our actions. We have to think about the intentionality of our actions, but we don't always think through the impact of our actions. So on several occasions, characters in the story are urged to stay on the path. So I want you to think about what you think that path could symbolize and why it's important to remain on that path. I think that one thing that I've been thinking about is staying on the path. For me, that really kind of meant following the rules on a really literal level, right? So in order for them to operate the time safari, they had to have people stay on the path. So they didn't alter the past because they wouldn't understand what that ripple effect would be in the present. And they continue to say things like everything in balance, right? We can't disrupt the balance of what was because it could change what is now. So there are kind of a couple of different areas here that I was thinking about in terms of extending that analysis or that understanding of the story, analysis of the story. And first is through the lens of the historical time period in which it was written. Ray Bradbury wrote the story in 1952, which was 7 years after World War II ended. And during this period of time, there was a huge amount of technological innovation happening. We were engaged in the space race with the Soviet Union. The United States had developed and detonated an atomic bomb in Japan, which ended the war. Excuse me. It wanted to show me. Okay, so we were talking about the historical context and the technological advancements that were happening now. And I wonder how Ray Bradbury's message in this story might relate to the advancements in technology that existed. The other area that I'd love you to think about is the political landscape here. Eccles, the protagonist, the anti-hero of the story, continues to worry about the election, right? He's glad that so and so won over um, the dictator-like candidate whose name starts with a D, Deutscher. Um, and when he comes to Back to the Future after going off the path and killing the butterfly, he discovers that the candidate that he did not support had won the election. So I think that there are layers to this story and to this message, and we can really think through. You can really think about how that may influence the theme. Um, but ultimately, I really think the story is about the interconnectedness of humans and their environment and what happens when we tamper with the past or the future for that matter, right? Time travel is something that in the story is available in 2055, which is not that far away. Some of the teachers at your school will still be teaching in 2055. I might be one of them. So uh, I think that interconnectedness of humans and their environment is something to think about. I also think about how little things can make a really significant difference, right? Eccles breaks the rule. He does not stay on the path, and killing that one butterfly has massive impacts on the future, including who is president, including how language is developed. And so I think it's important to think about how our actions can have consequences regardless of what our intention is. He didn't mean to cause harm, but he did cause great harm by going off the path. All right. So, your task today is to take a look at that feedback, make sure that you've written a claim that you can support with evidence, um, and get started on your paragraph assignment. Email me with any questions. Thank you.